Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Jesus Christ.
This.
Is that second? Is that second? Go. The second noise, is that the bullets hitting the ground? And the first one, is it leaving the?
Is the A-10 Thunderbolt II. More commonly known as the Warthog.
Halo.
The Air Force uses the A-10 for close air support. Missions that require the plane to fly low to provide cover and assist ground troops in battle.
So our whole mission in life and our whole job in life is to take care of the men and women on the ground. It's the only thing we think about, it's the only thing we train to, it's the only thing we talk about, and it's exactly what this airplane is built to do.
So I wonder when this massive machine gun, or when machine guns are better suited for a job than, say, like a missile or bombs are. I assume it's more targeted and less expensive. Does it have any other advantages? I wonder.
It's the only thing we talk about, and it's exactly what this airplane is built to do.
But these pilots may be among the last to be trained to fly it.
What is it? Is it going to be in a drone now?
For years, the Air Force has considered retiring the A-10 in favor of the newer F-35 fighter jet. And that might finally be happening with Congress approving the Air Force's plan to phase out the A-10 over the next 5 to 6 years. But the public debate over the need for the A-10 continues. And while some A-10s are as much as 50 years old, F-35s cost about $60 million more per aircraft and weren't built solely to support ground troops.
There may be a day that I am called to potentially help save someone's life when they're having the worst day of their life. That comes back to my training and making sure that I know what I'm doing in the jet.
So how vital is the A-10, and could the Air Force soon be without one of its most iconic warplanes?
Why is it that when I see a pilot with a mustache, I'm like, oh, thank God. All right, fly away, sir. As if it's like a qualification or something.
So the only base that A-10 pilots train at is at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
Before they fly the A-10, pilots train in the T-38 Talon during their initial flight training in Texas.
They fly completely different based on their flight performance and characteristics.
The T-38 is kind of like a sports car. It's quick, it's agile, it's fast. But the A-10 drives more like a Cadillac.
After graduating from flight training, new pilots move to their assigned posts.
Really liked the mission of the A-10 and thought it was super cool. I like the idea that it doesn't matter what I'm doing, that I'm strictly there for people on the ground.
If you look at it, not the most attractive looking plane, if you will. It's
What do you...
pretty ugly and doesn't have...
Sir, speak for yourself. Look at that gun. That is the most badass looking plane I've ever seen.
Have the swept-back wings. It's got, you know, big Hershey bar wings on it for like added stability. So it's just a mean-looking airplane, and that's ultimately like what a Warthog is.
What sound does the A-10 make when it fires?
You know, like bird, bird, bird. And that's actually just the noise of the bullets exiting the barrel.
So both...
This is the
Both sounds, though?
Avenger. It's a 30mm Gatling gun. It's built by General Electric, and this is the largest Gatling gun ever built and put into an airplane. So it's got it's 7 barrels. It shoots at a maximum rate about 3,900 rounds a minute. There's almost no target that the Galway is not a valid weapon to use against. As we go around, the titanium bathtub is one of the features designed specifically to protect the pilot in the airplane. So this whole panel right here, where you see these giant Phillips head looking fasteners, that whole panel is titanium. So you can hear all these are hollow aluminum. and that's rock solid titanium right there. This was one of the first fighter types that incorporated that into the design of the airplane, and it's the only one I know about that has a full bathtub encompassing the pilot. Behind this panel right here, this is our single point refueling system right here, so pull that cap off and fill the airplane up with fuel. We have 4 fuel tanks for a total of about 11,000 pounds of gas. If I'm topped off, I can fly for about 3 hours. And then once you add in aerial refueling,
it's like a male elephant's worth of gas in that plane.
gas. If I'm topped off, I can fly for about 3 hours. And then once you add in aerial refueling, we can fly pretty much indefinitely. And then as you're looking towards the back of the airplane, you can see we have a lot of hard points, a lot of weapon stations on the airplane. There's 11 in total. And between those, we can carry up to 16,000 pounds of ordnance on those 11 weapon stations. This is a Mark 82 bomb body, so a 500-pound bomb body, just a blast and fragmentation type weapon that you drop it, it's unguided on impact, and it detonates. This is a GBU-31.
So it seems like this is, how do I word this? I've never been in anything resembling close to anything military, guys. So if I sound stupid, there's a good chance I'm going to sound stupid. But it seems like it's a very dumb plane. Do you know what I mean by that? You know, like a dumb bomb versus a more targeted munition. And it's just more, you know, dropping bombs and shooting this big-ass Gatling gun, which, you know, I'm sure fits a role. Apparently they're you know, retiring it, but I'm not sure what was it, F-32? The one that he said is going to replace it. I don't really know the capabilities of that aircraft, but I'm sure the military knows what it's doing. And if they're phasing out this aircraft, then they probably have good reason for it.
This is a 2,000-pound detonates. This is a GBU-31. This is a 2,000-pound bomb with a GPS guidance kit on the back of it. So it's a coordinate-seeking weapon, meaning I can input a GPS coordinate, and that's exactly where that weapon's going to go.
Hey, never mind. It can... Jesus Christ.
But how does the A-10 stack up to the F-35 meant to
look at that
replace
thing.
it?
She's purty. Look at that plane. Again, I don't know anything, but that is the coolest jet I have ever seen.
Supporters of the F-35 say it has a huge stealth advantage, but detractors say it doesn't have the durability the A-10 does thanks to features like the titanium bathtub. Another concern is how F-35 pilots are trained. Insider reported that according to a 2022 training memo, no F-35 pilots are required to execute close air support training simulations in 2023 or 2024. For A-10 pilots, close air support is at the center of their training, which starts here in a virtual reality simulator lab.
So they're going to start off in the VR lab, and that's going to give them the sight pictures and the references on the ground and the references in the aircraft for the...
I'm sorry, my freaking ADHD or whatever. That's 3 in Braille. Sorry.
Simulator lab.
So they're going to start off in the VR lab, and that's going to give them the sight pictures and the references on the ground and the references in the aircraft for the first time.
Put that up. Hear the ECU kicking on.
So simulators are extremely important. They're able to practice everything in a safe environment with, professional instructors before they get out and actually fly them on their own.
Students familiarize themselves with the A-10's control panels and starting procedures before moving on to the flight simulator.
We're going to open our air-to-air refueling door at this point.
He was doing aerial refueling. It's a mission that the students actually perform in the aircraft pretty early in their training pipeline. Historically, without this lesson, it's usually taken about 10 to 15 minutes of talking to the students through getting the successful hookup in flight. Whereas now that we're able to have them practice with this lesson, they go out on that first flight having already done it before.
We want to take a look at our airspeed as we're in formation with the tanker.
Now the feedback we're getting from instructors is that they're just going right up to the boom and they're getting their hookup on their first try.
For the VR sim, you're getting the muscle memory. So the first time we practice it in the jet, we know physically what we're doing with our hands, and we know where our eyes should be, where we should gauge, and then our IPs are helping us fine-tune those things.
After spending...
Quick question. We're at 6:55. The badges. So, is that fighter squadron? I would guess FS is for? 357th. I'm curious, does anyone know if these are more arbitrary numbers or if there were 356 FS? I'm assuming it's fighter squadron. I could be wrong. Prior to this? I know that this isn't really important to the video, but just sometimes I like to throw out these questions that I'm curious about, and some of you actually know the answer.
What we're doing with our hands, and
sorry,
basic operation. After spending a month in the simulator and learning the basic operations of the aircraft, pilots begin flying training missions in the A-10. Captain Lindsay "Mad" Johnson has 5 years of experience flying the A-10. Today, she's training for a new role to be a pilot on an A-10 demo team, where she will highlight the capabilities of the Warthog.
I am about 2 hours shy of 1,200 hours in the A-10 itself. They call it like a crawl, walk, run process. So I did it in the sim multiple times. And then we go out to the airspace for my first time with a floor, not actual floor, but a simulated floor of 5,000 feet AGL. And then I go here, 2,000 feet AGL, 1,000 feet AGL, and then 500 feet AGL until I got through my first certification.
AGL as opposed to sea level altitude? Is that why there's the distinction?
Feet AGL until I got through my first certification.
After Johnson completed a few rolls and dives, she moved on to simulating a strafe, which is an attack on enemy ground forces. A technique used in close air support operations.
So when we do close air support, we are egressing, as they say it, from in front of the target area. I'm going out about 2.5 miles away at about 500 feet, and then I'm turning back around this way. And as I'm about just outside of a mile, I'll pop to about 30 degrees nose high, which allows me to get high enough to be able to see there is what would be designated as the friendlies and what would be designated as the enemy on the ground.
I'm getting dizzy just looking at it. I'm just
nose high, which allows me to get high enough to be able to see there is what would be designated as the friendlies and what would be designated as the enemy on the ground. And then as I visually acquire that out over my canopy rail, I'm then rolling in using both ailerons. My throttles are already in max. I'm rolling in, and then I'm putting basically my nose position down on what we consider to be like a 20-degree wire. So rather than flying straight and level, I'm 20 degrees nose low towards the ground. I learned about the A-10 growing up. I knew I wanted to do something kind of to pay homage to my dad's time in service. I was young when September 11th happened. I was 9, and he deployed 2 months after September 11th happened. That kind of stuck with me, and I knew I wanted to do something that was going to give back to my country as well.
He's a year older than me.
The A-10 debuted in combat in 1977, making it just shy of 50 years old, which is one reason many want it to be retired. For years, the Warthog has been the subject of debate between the U.S. Air Force and Congress. Some members of Air Force leadership have suggested retiring the A-10 to focus on developing more modern aircraft, like the $80 million F-35.
Why would you want to retire the least expensive, most accurate close air support system?
I don't want to retire it, Senator, but the Air Force has to get bigger to do all this.
But Congress has fought those requests due to the success of the A-10 in recent conflicts with ISIS and the Taliban.
Wait, I don't understand what he just said.
Most accurate close air support system.
I don't want to retire it, Senator, but the Air Force has to get bigger to do all this.
So he's saying he needs a bigger budget, but I thought it's one of the least expensive aircraft. I've said this before. I forget where I heard it, but it was someone in the military or during the Cold War who was comparing kind of American fighter jets to Russian ones, and the American ones tended to be much more sophisticated and capable aircraft in the right hands and conditions than the Russian one. But the Russian one could get much more beating. It could land on runways that don't have like one pebble you have to remove for the really expensive high-tech aircraft to land. And so it seems like there's giant positives to both kinds of weapons. On paper, I'm sure the more high-tech aircraft seems way better. But if your plane requires perfect conditions to take off, then what you're going to have, you might as well have no plane if your runway isn't in great shape, where a less sophisticated aircraft, maybe less capable, but more, you know what I mean? It is capable of taking off and flying with less trained pilots and in more conditions, right? You know what I'm trying to say. So it seems like it'd be a good idea to have both if you can afford having both, which if the U.S. can't, then... So I think to just only have that high-tech option is a mistake. Again, what do I know? Just kind of off the top of my head here.
I don't want a retired senator, but the Air Force has to get bigger to do all this.
But Congress has fought those requests due to the success of the A-10 in recent conflicts with ISIS and the Taliban, and the plane's overall cost efficiency.
It's tried and true. It's very rudimentary with the systems that it has, but why fix something that's not broke? It's been in every conflict that the United States has been in since Bosnia, Grenada, pretty much every contingent that the United States has been a part of. The A-10 has been pretty much the leader of all that.
Last year, Congress approved an Air Force proposal to retire 21 A-10s, reducing the total fleet to 260, with plans to decommission the remaining planes in the next 5 to 6 years.
People don't realize how much maintenance actually goes into keeping these aircraft airworthy. You know, it's not like a car, you know. When we wake up in the morning, we jump in the car, start it, and drive, right? These have starting issues, they have leaks, they're 40, 50 years old. They all have somewhere between 13,000 to 15,000 flight hours on them, and that exceeds the actual life expectancy of the airframe by, 5,000, 7,000 hours.
A-10 critics.
One of the coolest things about like hearing what he just said is being so far removed from any military technology or really like any technological prowess or know-how. When you look at stuff like warplanes, they seem like they have to be like divinely built, like it works. And then when you hear people talk about fixing it, you realize what should be obvious, that this is something that it makes me realize just how smart people are in how this was just, and obviously there's been over 100 years of aviation history, so it's not like they just made this. They stood on the shoulders of people who came before them. But I think when you're so far removed, look at a car. I'm always amazed, okay, by a car. I remember like being like a kid or like a teenager and just realizing like, wait a second. Humans took like the earth, materials around the earth, and formed it into that. People are so smart. And even more so when it comes to this stuff, obviously. But the fact that a flying, really fast, really reliable flying thing that can shoot stuff down, sometimes you just gotta step back and be in awe of that. How smart people are and capable. Capable is a better word. How capable some governments are at just making things. It's really incredible.
expectancy of the airframe by, 5,000, 7,000 hours.
A-10 critics may use the plane's maintenance issues to fuel their argument, but the cost of maintaining the F-35 jumped 15% between 2018 and 2020.
What happens to you when you finish the training?
Once we all finish, we'll go to the different assigned bases, so I'll be going to Korea next. It's just fun to fly. It does a job that no one else does, and you're good at that. That is your thing. That's the A-10's thing.
After completing the 6-month training program at Davis-Monthan, newly certified A-10 pilots will begin their careers as fighter pilots in the U.S. Air Force.
The plane was built well before I was alive, and knowing just like the generations of people that flew the plane before me were looking at the exact same gauges that I'm looking at. So it's a pretty unique experience. I knew as like a younger child that I wanted to fly the A-10. My grandpa was in the Army. He has seen the A-10 like when he was in the Army do things, and so that was even more just like a further drive to pursue the airplane.
While everybody knows us for the gun and its capabilities, a thing that we take most pride in as an A-10 community is protecting the lives of the men and women that are on the ground.
I understand that it's war, that something as serious as warfare is what is going to do this, but I'm still amazed at how I couldn't do this stuff, okay? Even with training, I don't think I could do it. And my eyesight is horrible. Long-range eyesight is terrible. But I'm always amazed at just how governments have problems, militaries have problems, countries have issues, nobody's perfect. But I sometimes I just, like, good job, people. Having... Anyways. Yeah, I want to say before about, like, a high-tech plane versus one. It's like, imagine you have this super nice assault rifle, and, like, it has night vision, and, like, laser, it's super accurate. It has all these little doohickey, all these little things on it that make it so nice. And you drop it in the dirt, and dirt gets in it, and now it's useless. It's like, I'd rather have a baseball bat at that point. And then you have something like an AK-47, which might have some drawbacks, but you teach, like, a farmer how to use, like, an hour to, like, know how to put it together, and you could throw it around, and it'll still shoot. And I think it would be good to have both kinds of weapons. I'm not saying get rid of the high-tech weapon that I'm sure in the right hands and conditions far outperforms other stuff, but I think it's good to have a Warthog or other planes that are less sophisticated but more reliable and hardy. Really interesting video. As you can tell, I still don't know much about this stuff, but I enjoy learning, and I love seeing your comments down below. So if you wouldn't mind, like you guys always do, you're super good at that. Answering any of my questions, any comments at all. Hope you guys are doing well, and hopefully I'll see you next video. Bye, guys.